Welcome to the CURES digital show and podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin, and we want to thank the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services for making this work possible as our sponsor. So we're talking about mental health. A pretty exciting study was published in a big-time journal that says mindfulness meditation may be as effective as common medications like Lexapro when it comes to reducing anxiety. So when it comes to actually putting this into practice, and especially for our kids, what's the best way to introduce mindfulness to make it effective? Here with us now is Dr. Laura Saunders. She is a child psychologist at the Institute of Living. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you for having me, Kara.
Yeah, I'm so excited about the study because let's first just talk about what that was. I mean, there's a lot of things that we see in blogs or online, but this was a major journal with a pretty well-performed study that found this effectiveness.
Yeah, so this research study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So that's for psychiatry, that's a peer-reviewed journal. Very, very credible, obviously. And the actual study was a group of 276 adults with untreated anxiety disorders. So what they did is they put half the patients and randomly selected them to take either 10 or 20 milligrams of Lexapro, and the other half went into an 8-week course on mindfulness-based stress reduction. And the results were really stunning. So really, after just 8 weeks, both groups experienced about a 20% reduction in their anxiety symptoms over that 8-week period. Now, it's important because medications can be helpful. I'm not putting down medications, but some people have significant side effects. Some people don't want to take medications. So if you are someone who wants to engage in the regular practice of mindfulness, it can help you with your anxiety.
So let's talk about that. What is the definition of mindfulness?
So let's talk about the the 3 key characteristics of mindfulness. So it's the intention to cultivate awareness, kind of in return to it again and again. It's giving attention to the present moment. So simply observing thoughts and feelings and sensations, and it's creating an attitude of non-judgmental and being curious and kind. So it's kind of attention and that non-judgmental attitude and bringing yourself back to the present moment. And what I always like to emphasize, and this is something you can start with kids and adolescents and adults, is that mindfulness, they call it mindfulness practice, mindfulness as a skill, because, unless you're close to Gandhi, this is not something that we do automatically. And so when you engage in mindfulness, and really it's just about starting for like 3 to 5 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be a long period of time. It's about teaching yourself to be in the present moment, to focus on your breath, or some people don't want to close their eyes. They focus on an image. They have a mantra, or they have phrases that they repeat. And it really is about keeping yourself in the present moment. And the practice comes in because for everyone, distracting thoughts come into your mind. That's not a sign that you're failing at this. Again, that's the non-judgmental part. It's a sign that, how do we let things go? So if you think about in the practice of anxiety, right, anxious thoughts sort of come in and they spin around in your mind over and over and over again, and they make you get really upset or really anxious. So it's the practice of letting go of some of those anxious thoughts.
Right. So let's just be clear here. For those who say, I can't meditate or I can't do mindfulness because I never stop thinking. Newsflash, everybody thinks when they do this. It's the practice of not letting the thoughts take over you.
Everybody has distracting thoughts. Again, unless you're like close to Buddha, everyone has distracting thoughts when they do this, right? I start my mindfulness practice. It's like, oh, I forgot to pick up something at Walgreens. And then I don't criticize myself. Oh, why do you always forget these things? You shouldn't write more lists. It's non-judgmentally letting it go. I'll get back to that at another time. What I need to get at the grocery store, another errand that I need to do. These distracting thoughts, sometimes bizarre thoughts like, a memory from your childhood, right? So these thoughts will come into your mind, and it's a matter of acknowledging them and then releasing them non-judgmentally. So bringing yourself back to the present moment. So you bring yourself back to your breath, because you're focusing on sort of a deeper breath. As I've said, I have a set of 4 phrases, and I'm happy to share them. I didn't make them up, that I use all the time, right? And so, my phrases are: I am happy, I am at peace, I am healthy, and I am safe. And I have all sorts of pieces of paper that I keep around my desk, because these are my phrases, and this is how I ground myself, and I bring myself back into my body and in the present moment, because I am happy, I am at peace, I am healthy, and I am safe. And even if all those things are not true, which there's a good amount of time those things are not all true, I'm bringing myself back to a center to remind myself and give myself permission to be okay.
So it's the power of intention. And if you're starting to do this, you're saying even just a couple of minutes a day, and maybe you're not going to sit there in a totally silent room. I like to say that I wrote a blog on the blow dry meditation that, I have to blow dry my hair. Hey, there's a lot of white noise, and, you can be like, I am safe, I'm okay. Like, rather than thinking of my grocery list, which also goes in my head. But sometimes if you're busy, pairing it with an activity, which might actually work for kids too, right? Like having them do something while they're moving.
Yeah, and you can do, when I was running a program, we used to do mindfulness walks, right? So in a mindfulness walk, you might focus on your 5 senses. Like, as you're walking, what do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear? What can you taste? So you go through your 5. I'm missing a sense there, but you go over your 5 senses, and then when that distracting thought comes in, you think, wow, but right now I see how beautiful the yellow ginkgo leaves are outside my window. Or you bring yourself back to your 5 senses. So there's many ways to do this. There's no one right way. You don't have to do it for 30 minutes to make it effective. It's simply the practice of bringing yourself back to your kind of grounding yourself in the present moment, and bringing your attention back to whatever, whether it's your breath or your mantra, and being non-judgmental, curious, and open.
I think this is so great, and I try to meditation, they'll say, don't use the word try, but I try to instill this in my kids. And I find that teens especially, or middle grade people, they're very resistant to maybe want to slow down or do this, or to them a break is I want to look at my phone, which we know that that's not giving you the same thing. How do you introduce to your kids, because we know this can really help them?
So the hard part is that, like middle school and high school group, they're resistant to everything. Unless they came up with the idea themselves, they're resistant to it. So with so many folks, it obviously works a little bit better if someone is struggling with anxiety, right? So if someone's struggling with anxiety and it's starting to hinder their functioning, because that's our guideline, right? We all have anxiety. I don't want to badmouth anxiety. Some amount of anxiety can be helpful for us. Sometimes it motivates us to do things, but it's when anxiety becomes debilitating or hinders our functioning, or creates kind of ruminating thought loops in our mind that we can't get out of. It's at that point that we want to do something. So if teens are sort of floating along and doing okay, they're not that interested in it. It's when it starts to hinder their functioning, or their anxiety's out of control, that you get better motivation to learn techniques. And what I also say is I think of anxiety like a lot of different things, sort of on a bell curve, right? When you're at the peak of your anxiety, when your anxiety is at a level 9, you're probably not going to sit down and do a few minutes of mindfulness, right? It's learning to do these things and training your mind and your body when you're at lower levels of anxiety, knowing that your pattern is that you'll spike up at lower levels of anxiety. This works as a good practice to bring yourself down and really break the cycle of how those anxious thoughts have such a negative effect on you.
So you bring up the point of, when you're at a 9 of anxiety, which I think is what, you're right, people get motivated to do things when they have a need, so that makes sense. But when you're really like that, what do you do in that moment to maybe calm yourself down? Is there something you would advise people when they're really feeling it?
So when you're at that level of anxiety, probably sitting and doing some mindfulness training is not going to be most helpful. What I say in those situations is move a muscle, change a mood. So you're going to need to maybe do something more active. But what it is, it's about understanding yourself and your patterns and knowing that, every Sunday night I have problems, or, certain activities cause me high level of anxiety, or maybe you're someone that just struggles with anxiety, kind of what we call generalized anxiety a lot of the time. So for those situations, it's catching yourself or addressing anxiety when I always do things by levels, right? So when it's like a level 2, 3, or 4, or 5, it's easier to manage the anxiety. When it's at a 9 or 10, you need to do more active things to manage your anxiety. Or for maybe some people, they need to be on medication to better manage their anxiety. But what we're trying to point out is that there are other things that you can do, and not just taking medication. And please, if you're on medication, do not just go off your medication, right. Consult your doctor. But there are other things that you can do. So knowing yourself and knowing how, what your triggers are or what your precipitants are in certain situations, and using that to better help yourself. And it is hard with teens, right? We do believe this can be helpful for them, but if we suggest it, it's not that helpful. But when they do hit those points where their anxiety is overwhelming, those are your entry points to say, there are things you can do to help yourself.
Absolutely. Okay. And you make a good point that some people, the medication is very helpful for. It's good to know that the study found it was equal if you really have a problem taking it. But putting them together, it doesn't have to be either or. I've heard you use the phrase skills and pills. So perhaps if you're really struggling and you need to balance your chemistry a little, you might do both. But sometimes just taking the pill isn't going to be enough either.
Yes, I actually liken this often to a medical model. So if someone has, let's just say, high blood pressure, right? If you have seriously high blood pressure, maybe making change to your diet and exercising more will help you, but you might need to do both, right? You might need to take a medication that lowers your blood pressure and, improve your diet and eat healthier and exercise a little more, get outside and walk. So it is usually multiple things that you can do, not just any one thing. I don't want to just rely on medication, even for anxiety. I don't want anyone to just rely on medication, because there's things that we can do. We need to believe that we have a sense of control or efficacy over aspects of our life. There are things that are not in our control, and it's important to acknowledge that as well. But yes, for some people, medication's helpful. So I'm certainly not putting down medication in any way, but I really want people to realize that there are things that they can do in their life to make them feel better and to break that cycle of anxiety.
I love that we're learning that the brain is a little bit more like Play-Doh than we used to understand. So when we're meditating, when we're doing this, the why would be like every time we're interrupting those anxious thoughts, we're kind of creating a new pattern, which is what we want to do. I've heard some hacks also. I'm thinking of things that people can do quickly, like putting your hand on your heart, saying some of those meditations, the mantras you've mentioned, I'm safe, I'm okay. So, and easy thing to remember, the 4-4-4 breath, right? You can imagine a box going in for 4, holding for 4, out for 4. And you say people could take courses, or maybe just go on YouTube or go online, because there's a lot of free, just Google the word meditation or mindfulness, and you might see a lot of free courses to get started.
Right. There are things you can do if you need some guidelines, but it doesn't have to be that complicated, and it doesn't have to be that hard. It's just a matter of understanding and really giving yourself permission. And again, it's called mindfulness practice. No one does it well in the beginning. And it's just about being non-judgmental. When those distracting thoughts come in, you acknowledge them. Oh, I'm thinking about my grocery list again. I'm going to let that go, and I'm going to come back to my mantra, because my mantra is, I am happy, I am at peace, I am healthy, and I am safe, right? So I come back to that, and I focus on my breathing. And it can be blended into your day-to-day activities. It can be blend it into your walk from your car into your workplace. It can be from from your home to your car in the morning, or spending a few minutes at the end of your workday, or the end of if you're a stay-at-home person, which also is work, that you just find a few minutes in an activity. Some people can vacuum, and that's a very mindful activity. As you go back and forth, you think positive thoughts, you breathe in and out.
Yes.
In and out, right? You do things to kind of slow your mind down.
Yes, I like the move a muscle, change a mood. So we could actually get some cleaning done and affirm that we are releasing anything that doesn't serve us as we sweep up the mess. But
Absolutely.
Water, people, I've done a lot of interviews on people with meditation. One thing that stuck out with me, they said, John Edwards, the famous psychic, he said, he meditates every day, and he wrote a book about it. And he said, people say, I don't have time. And he said, but everyone takes a shower. He's like, just taking a few moments in the shower. So, you could pair this to get started, like, you're usually not on your phone in your shower, like just doing some peaceful things in the shower, which most of us do every day.
Yeah, I mean, it can be in the shower and sometimes I just encourage people to focus on their senses, right?
Okay.
So if you're doing a shower mindfulness, right? How does the water feel on my skin? What does it feel like when I use soap? What does my scalp feel like when I rub my hands through it? What do I smell? What are the smells? So you don't have to make this complicated. And doing all those, and certainly, like for a lot of people with their body image stuff, being non-judgmental, right? It's not a time to judge yourself. It's not a time to criticize yourself. You're letting go of the judgment. You're being kind and curious.
Kind and curious. So final thoughts, if we want to get started here, for those of you who are listening who have a really great meditation practice, great for you. But for those of us who are hearing this study and going, gosh, I really want to work on this and I don't know where to start, what would your final thoughts be? Maybe the 3 things we could work on after listening to this.
So I would either pick a YouTube video that kind of goes over some simple things. I would actually focus on a time of the day, right? Like you're someone someone might really want to do it in the morning, or someone might want to do it midday after lunch. Like, find a time of the day, put a little reminder in your phone, and start with that. And it's really about building practice into your life. And it's your intention. It's being the present moment and being non-judgmental, curious, kind, and open. So start with some basic things. 3 to 5 minutes a day is a good amount. That'll just kind of ground you back into your present moment. As I told you, I've done a lot of mindfulness training. I did transcendental meditation when I was in graduate school, and I've done a lot of it, hypnosis work. This is really very helpful for people.
Yeah, I love that people can get a chance to enter it, and then, we're all different, so just starting, you'll figure out what works for you. I'll throw it out there that I learned some years ago. There was a 21-day free meditation challenge, and something about doing it for 21 days and knowing that I did it. But you can look for those too as well. Guided meditations can be helpful if you're not so advanced at it. But anyway, thank you for, I'll also throw out Copper Beach Institute if you're in Connecticut. They do a lot of mindfulness-based stress reduction classes. So Dr. Laura, thank you so much. And hopefully we can give people some skills.
I am happy, I am at peace, I am healthy, and I am safe.
Yes, I'm going to use that in my blow-dry meditation. All right, thank you, Dr. Saunders. Hey, we have to do these things every day, right? Make your daily grind a sacred grind. Thanks, Dr. Saunders. And if this was helpful to you, take care. Yeah, if this was helpful to you, please share it. You can follow me on social media at Kara Sundlin. I love to share this content there. Let people know to subscribe and download the CURES podcast. This is, I think, an episode that's going to help a lot of people. Let us know what you think if you're on social. Don't forget to leave a comment. Have a great day and be well.